Before I carry on today, I'd like to tell you a story about my own life. I have a fear of heights. I suspect many of you too who are listening or watching today got a fear of heights, or maybe the fear of speed, somebody going very fast. That's an inbuilt fear we have, to conserve yourself. You don't want to get hurt. But sometimes it's unnatural. But as a kid growing up, I know people encouraging us. And as a young child, sometimes you do things out of nature. And although you're afraid of these heights, we used to jump off a garage roof onto a trampoline and then onto a jumping castle. And some of us got hurt. And then also, you go on a high building and just your mind is playing tricks on you. And it feels like this building is starting to move around and it's extremely high. And your tummy starts turning. I think many of you can relate to that. And I remember as a young child, first time going on a super tube, a water slide. Not only is it high, but it's fast as well. And then your father goes up, or your mother, they go down and they say, see, look, it's not that bad. You must come with us. And then maybe your first ride, they are holding you. That is what the sermon is about. Is that God goes before us, as your parent goes before you, and you put your trust in them. Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 6, he says to the disciples, do not worry about tomorrow. Many of us, our lives are filled with worries, and we feel anxiety and we feel unsure. What is going to happen tomorrow? Will I be okay? Will I be healthy? Will there be enough money in the bank? Will there be food to eat? Will my kids be okay at school? And then Jesus says, don't worry about tomorrow. Live in the moment. Live now in today. Because God is already in your tomorrow. Read with me in John 10, verse 1-4. I'll be reading from the English Standard Version. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who does not enter the sheepfold by the door, but climbs in by another way, that man is a thief and a robber. But he who enters by the door is the shepherd of the sheep. To him the gatekeeper opens. The sheep hear his voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them. And the sheep follow him, for they know his voice. The shepherd comes through the gate. In the past week, we had a break-in at church. They jumped over the gate and they stole both our pressure pumps, one for the garden and one for the church. We've been without water for a couple of days. They are thieves because they didn't enter by the gate. And this is what this scripture speaks about. But then he says, he leads us out. In the sheepfold or the barn, you are safe as his sheep. And then he leads you out. And sometimes the wolves and the jackals are there, maybe even the snakes. But he says the shepherd goes before the sheep. He leads them out. So he can fight off the bear and the lion and the wolves and the jackals and the snakes. And he fights on your behalf. Even though you're in a dangerous area. And sometimes as parents, we are very concerned and worried about our children, dropping them off at school. I want to encourage you, don't worry. God knows the situation you're in. And as a parent, you love your children and you pray for them. You encourage them. Trust that when you drop your children off at school, that God goes before them. You can't protect them always, but God can. You can't always be with them, but God can always be with them. He goes before you and he goes before them. Jesus tells us of the shepherd that leads his sheep. We are not always in a place of safety, but the one who protects us and helps us and saves us, he is always with us. Here the Bible speaks. He says he is the good shepherd. He is the one that takes care of you. He's the one that feeds you. He's the one that knows your every need. We're going to read a couple of passages in the Bible where we see God knows exactly what the needs of his people are. And he provides those specific needs. If you're in need of faith, God gives that to you. If you're in need of finances, God might provide there for you. If you're in need of health, God provides there. In John chapter 8, God says, he is the light of the world. In the first chapter of John, the Bible starts, it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. And later it says, he is the light, and the darkness could not overwhelm it. He is the light of the world. No, thinking of a light, when you're walking in the dark, you don't shine a light behind you. When God says, Jesus is the light, he is in front of you, and he is shining on your path where you should go. Now, sometimes we would like this massive, big, bright light to see further into the future. But let me tell you what, God gives you enough light for now, for today, to shine and be a light in your life. Don't worry about tomorrow. That same light, Jesus, will be there tomorrow, the day after, next year, in 10 years' time. In John 14, another promise comes. Jesus says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. I am the way, I am the truth, and I am the life. He goes before us. He is the way. He doesn't only show us the way. He is the way. What you need to understand is that God is omnipotent. He's all-powerful, and he is not contained by time or by darkness or by light. He is everywhere, every time, every day of your life. He is there, part of your life. Knowing that he was there when you were born, he was there before you were born, but he is still there in your life today, but he is also in your future. And that is where we find our hope in this promise, is that God goes before you, he goes before me. When you are sick, he goes before you. When you suffer, he goes before you. He suffered. He goes before you. When you are hungry, Jesus was hungry. He goes before you. He knows what you are going through. I want you to read with me in Exodus chapter 13, verse 21 to 22. By day the Lord went ahead of them in a pillar of cloud to give them on their way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them light, so that they could travel by day or night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place in front of the people. What was the need of the people? Now, when you look at a desert, some of you might have been in a desert before. It is absolutely scorchingly hot in the daytime. And then in the evening, it's very cold. You've got these extremes. And while they were traveling, this nation of God in the desert, it was rocky and bumpy and dry and dust and sand everywhere. God knew what their needs were. They needed a cloud to lead them, but also cast a shadow for them. Some shade in which they could walk. And then at night, they needed light and they needed heat, and God supplied the fire, the pillar of fire for them. So they could literally travel day or night. And God knew exactly what their needs were. In the same way, God knows what your needs are and my needs are. And he provides not always for our wants, but our needs. Read with me in Deuteronomy 1 verse 28. Where are we going up? Our brothers have made our hearts melt, saying, the people are greater and taller than we. The cities are great and fortified up to heaven. And besides, we have seen the sons of Anakim here. Then I said to you, do not be in dread or afraid of them. The Lord your God, who goes before you, will himself fight for you. Just as he did for you in Egypt, before your eyes and in the wilderness, where you have seen how the Lord your God carried you as a man carries his son, all the way that you went until you came to this place. Yet in spite of this word, you did not believe the Lord your God, who went before you in the way to seek you out a place to pitch your tents, in fire by night and a cloud by day, to show you by what way you should go. Here again, God says, I will go before you. But unfortunately, people's hearts, they do not always put their trust in God. And they lost faith and they lost hope. Now, Joshua and Caleb, the leaders at that time, they were walking ahead and telling the people that they were going to enter the city and conquer the city of Jericho. And they were speaking about their past, their parents telling them about these giants, about these strong cities. Now their ancestors, these people, these youngsters who now grew older, they told the stories and they repeated the stories of what their parents told them about these fearful men and these grand, strong cities. And then Joshua and Caleb said, do not fear, for God will go before us and fight for us. Now there's a passage in Joshua where we read where Joshua, they encounter an angel of God. And read with me this passage, Joshua 5, verse 13 to 14. When Joshua was by Jericho, he lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, a man was standing before him with his drawn sword in his hand. And Joshua went to him and said to him, are you for us or for our adversaries? Are you for or against us? And he said, no, but I am the commander of the army of the Lord. Now I have come. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and worshipped and said to him, what does my Lord say to his servant? What did he need? His need was somebody to fight this battle on behalf of the Israelite people. They didn't know how to fight. They were making bricks in Egypt. Their parents were brick makers in Egypt. They didn't know how to work with steel or make swords and spears, and they weren't warriors. They weren't soldiers. And then this angel comes and says, I will fight for you. He has a sword that is drawn. This angel was very likely the Son of God, Jesus Christ himself. How can we say this? Read another passage with me in the New Testament, 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 1 to 4. For I do not want you to be unaware, brothers, that our fathers were all under the cloud and all passed through the sea. And all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. And all ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink. For they drank from the spiritual rock that followed them, and the rock was Christ. Moses hit the rock, the water came out. That is an Old Testament. And this passage, Paul writes, he says, the rock was Jesus Christ. Now also, how we know this is Jesus Christ, every time when an angel appeared to man and they wanted to fall down and worship them, the angel said, do not worship me. Here, it wasn't prohibited. The angel let him worship him. So this was the Son of God, Jesus Christ. He knew they needed someone to fight on their behalf. He knew that they can't win the battle by themselves. And they come and they walk around the walls of Jericho, and the walls come tumbling down, and they invade the city because God goes before them. The promise that he says, I will fight this battle on your behalf. God is waiting for his people. He is waiting for you already in your future, tomorrow, later today. He has gone through everything that you have gone through, Jesus Christ. And God promises, I will go before you. All those promises that he made in the Old Testament to his people, to his nation, we can now take hold of those promises because of the work of the cross of Jesus Christ. If you repent of your sins and you become a born-again child of God, every promise that God gave Abraham and Isaac, Joseph, those promises are now true in our lives. God promises that He will always be with us. He will always go before us. Nothing can separate us from His love. Nothing can pluck us from His hand. In Psalm 139, David writes, he says, is there anywhere I can go and hide from you, or where I will not find you? Can I go to the heavens? No, you will find me there. Can I go down into Sheol? No, you will find me there. God is omnipotent. He's all-powerful. He is everywhere. He is in your past. He's in your future. He can be trusted. This promise, I go before you, is one that we as believers should hold on to every day of our lives. Jesus says to His disciples, I'm going ahead of you to prepare a place for you. Again, Jesus goes and enters death. He's going before us. One day, you and I will die. Jesus has died. He's gone before us. But Jesus, 3 days later, also rose from the dead. So too, you and I, as born-again believers, we will rise from the dead when He comes with His second coming. Jesus suffered on the cross. When you suffer, no, He has gone before you. Jesus went hungry. Maybe you are going hungry. He has gone before you. What an amazing promise. He is in my future, and He is preparing a place for you and I to be with Him one day in heaven. Jesus says, I am the shepherd. I enter through the door, through the gate. And if you hear my voice, follow me. He's the good shepherd. He goes before you. He will not leave you nor forsake you. If you are worried about tomorrow, if you are worried about your marriage, your family life, your health, your job, your children at school, the prayer that you have to pray is, God, I know you are in my future. I trust your promise. My own children are growing up, and one day they have to leave my house. And sometimes you drop off your kids at school and you don't know what's going to happen to them. God says, I will go before them. If that is your prayer, if that is what they need, God gives you those promises. When you are sick and ill in hospital, God goes before you. If you lost a loved one, someone to death, Jesus also lost a beloved friend, Lazarus, and He wept. He knows your pain. He knows your struggles. Let Him go before you. Turn your face to Him. Let His light shine into your life. Young people, are you worried? Are you going to have a job? Are you one day, when you finish with school, will you be able to go to university? Will you find a husband or a wife? I'm telling you, God is going before you. Making a decision to move to another city, God is going before you. Getting a new job, God is going before you. Thinking about marriage, God is going before you. What an amazing promise that still is true today in your life and my life. Let's bow our heads and pray together. Lord, we thank you for this promise. You go ahead of us. So many stories in the Old Testament where you kept your promise. When your nation needed light and heat, by night you gave that to them. When they needed a cloud by day to cool them down, you gave them that. When they needed someone to fight the battle on their behalf, you gave them that. When they needed water, Moses hit the rock and the water came forth. You are aware of all our needs. You know what we need. And you go before us and you prepare a place for us. I pray, Lord, that our anxiety and our worries, that we would place it on you and trust that the same God that parted the Red Sea will make a way for us and lead us into an uncertain future. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for being with us today. May the Lord bless you.